For the start of Unit 9, we reviewed a few things from earlier in this semester with Zionism. This was a movement that started in the 1800s, pushing for a Jewish nation, a Jewish state, because if you think of all of the Jewish people who had spread out around the world because of the diaspora after the fall of the temple, that they have a shared culture, but they don't have a country. So Zionism is that push to get a Jewish nation state. Then the Sykes-Picot Agreement in 1917, this is during World War I, has to do with the Ottoman Empire's territory. In 1917, World War I was winding down, and it was looking like Britain and France would be on the winning side. And they had started carving up the Ottoman territory for themselves and just drawing borders. This was when we watched Sir Maps a lot. And part of the territory that was there was what we would call the Holy Land or Palestine. In the same year, the Balfour Declaration is a statement by the British government saying they would support the creation of a Jewish homeland. Now, it never says country, but that's what many of the Jews interpret. And many of you remembered that it was really created to get America to join the war effort because President Wilson's top two advisors were Zionist Jews. So we're going to look at modern Israel in this unit as well as the Cold War. There are 5 things that can help us understand some of the issues that Israel faces even to this day. 1, we're going to count to 5. 1 is there's one city, the city of Jerusalem. It is incredibly important and symbolic to many people, many religions, many cultures. So the city of Jerusalem is number 1. Number 2, there are 2 national interests. This means there are 2 groups in this area, the Holy Land, who both want to be a nation. They both have a unique culture, and they feel very strongly that this territory should be theirs entirely. Some people think we'll just create 2 different countries, split up the land. That's one idea, but both groups theoretically want the entirety of the territory. With the Palestinians, so we've got the Israelis who are mostly Jewish, and the Palestinians who are mostly Muslim. The Palestinians are located, or most of their population are in these 2 areas. We've got the Gaza Strip, which is prime beachfront realty. And then we have the West Bank. It's the West Bank of the Jordan River. And this is really, this is where the Bible happens, is in the West Bank. This is Judea and Samaria. This is everything that you learn about, especially in sophomore Bible class, about the life of Jesus and the creation of the temple and Nehemiah rebuilding the walls. All of that is in the West Bank. So it is populated primarily by the Palestinian people. So we've got 1 city, 2 national interests, and 3 religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. All 3 religions claim this territory as their own. So we've got 1 city, 2 national interests, 3 religions, and 4 quarters of the city of Jerusalem. We've got the three religions. They each have a part of the city. And then we also have the Armenians, one of the oldest Armenian communities in the world. And it was bolstered by the fact that in 1915, with the Armenian Genocide, more Armenians came to live there. All 4 of these groups fight over what part of the city they control. And they're very petty about it because it is so important to them. Then we've got 5,000 years of history. So all of this should be review, hopefully, that God made a promise to Abraham that he would be the father of many nations. And the Jewish people see themselves as the fulfillment of that promise through Isaac. The Palestinians see themselves as the fulfillment through Ishmael. They feel that the land has been promised, the Jews of Israel feel that the land has been promised to them, and that with Moses and David and coming back to the promised land, they claimed it. But then it was divided because they were disagreeing. Then the Babylonians attack, and the story of Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And then we've got the Greeks and the Romans sort of trying to control the Palestine and control this region. And then at the birth of Christ, I mean, this was an incredibly contentious time period when the Romans were taking control. And then in 90 AD, when the temple is destroyed, then we have the diaspora. And this is when the Jews spread out, because they're essentially kicked out of Jerusalem. Then in the 400s, Muhammad and the creation of a brand new religion that will start to compete for this territory. In the Crusades, the Christians have become the dominant religion, and they want to take back the Holy Land. They want to take back Jerusalem because they see the Muslims as infidels, and they also see the Jews as Christ killers. With the Ottoman Empire, again, someone else controlling. This is just part of the story, part of the narrative, that the Jewish people and the idea of Israel is all about struggle and a fight over who's going to control, who's going to be the leader, though. Who's going to control the land? Who's going to be the leader of these people? They are still waiting. The Jews are still waiting for a Messiah. They are expecting and have been expecting a hero to ride in on a stallion with a sword, not a humble carpenter on a donkey. So all of this lays the foundation for understanding, trying to understand Israel. So then let's speed up to where we have left off in our history class. After World War II, even though the British were on the winning team, they're part of the Allies, they are exhausted. They had been fighting for 6 years, and this entire empire that they built, and we talked about that in Unit 6 at the beginning of the semester, that the British simply do not have the energy or the resources to continue to control their empire. You see here, this is the British Mandate. The British controlled Palestine, as it's called, or the Holy Land, as a result of the Sykes-Picot Agreement. So they gained that in the Sykes-Picot Agreement, carving up the Ottoman Empire. Another reason why Israel happened is because of the Holocaust. We watched the video clip in class, and there's a link to it in Canvas, from the historian Simon Schama. And he explained that not only was it what the Nazis did to the Jews in Europe, but what everyone else failed to do. They failed to speak up. They failed to come to the aid of the Jewish population in Europe. That really made the case for a Jewish state, a place for these displaced Jews to go. So in 1947, this new group, the United Nations, we'll talk more about them later, they come up with a plan. It's called the Partition Plan, because if you look here, here is what Palestine was like before 1947. A few Jewish settlements that had been created over a number of decades, but primarily mostly open or miscellaneous Palestinian settlements. Here, the United Nations has carved out all of these sections for Jewish people, for the Jewish population. The city of Jerusalem, because it is so important, is neutral. It will be administered by the United Nations, but it is in the heart of that Arab-Palestinian territory. The United Nations, if they're going to create a country, you can't just say we're a country. You have to do some legwork, create some infrastructure. So they work with a man, David Ben-Gurion. Ben-Gurion had been the leader of the Jewish Agency, it was called, in the British Mandate, and he will be instrumental in creating the nation of Israel. One of the first things that he says must happen, that is essential, is mandatory military service. Ben-Gurion knows that Israel is surrounded by countries that really don't like them, by Arab nations that don't like the idea of a Jewish nation. That they are surrounded, that they are small, and so mandatory military service will try to make sure that Israel can defend itself. He also makes a statement that this is not just Jewish by culture, that this country will be Jewish by religion, that all government offices will observe the Sabbath, that all government offices will serve kosher food, following these Jewish laws, because not only is this just about a culture, it is about a religion and a way of life. He also wants to establish an excellent education system for the Jews that will be living here. Ben-Gurion knows that in order to create a functioning modern democracy, you need a literate population. And so by creating a strong educational system, the government will work better, the economy will be stronger, and hopefully this country will be stronger overall. So this planning goes on for about a year, and on May 14th, 1948, Israel is born. The state of Israel is created, and the last of the British colonial rulers leave. With any new nation, one thing that they crave is legitimacy. Someone else saying, yes, we recognize that you are a nation. Israel is recognized immediately by Russia and the Soviet Union, which sort of speaks to some of the underlying tensions between those two countries, which we'll talk about more in this unit. The problem is that all of these Arab Palestinians, in addition to the surrounding nations, what I call the neighborhood, they hate this idea of a Jewish state. So we have the Arab-Israeli War, sometimes it's called the War of Independence. The Arab League, which is essentially all those neighboring nations, fighting on behalf of those Palestinians, saying, why didn't those people get a state? Why didn't they get a country? Thankfully, Ben-Gurion had built up this military service, and almost miraculously, Israel is able to defend itself. They are able to hold off defeat. And in 1949, there's a ceasefire, and finally we have permanent borders. So here we have the permanent borders. Those two areas, again, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, where the Palestinians are living primarily. And the orange is the nation of Israel. Now they can really get started on creating their government. And they will choose a parliamentary system. They will choose democracy. The people will elect representatives, and the representatives will make the laws. The parliament in Israel is called the Knesset. It still exists today. And one thing that is so fascinating to me about the Knesset is, unlike in America, where you vote for politicians, you vote for individuals. Instead, in Israel, you vote for the party. You vote for the political party that best represents what you want to see accomplished. And there are almost 24 political parties within Israel. So that means it's going to be nearly impossible for any one party to get the majority. That means that parties will have to cooperate. They'll have to work together to accomplish anything. And this is so characteristic to Jewish culture, because debate, argument, and then consensus, finding the best solution, makes sense in a democracy. To reward all of the effort that he put forth in creating the country, Ben-Gurion is named as the first prime minister. And one of the first laws that the Knesset passes is called the Law of Return. And this essentially says any Jewish person and their spouse and their family, if they want citizenship, they can come to Israel. We will give them a passport. All of these Jews around the world, especially in Europe, who feel that they're lost, that they have nowhere to go, they have no home, we will be their home. So this means that millions of Jews start flooding into this small territory, which puts an additional burden or stressor onto all of those Palestinians living there. We're going to skip forward to 1956 and the Suez Crisis. The Suez Canal is in Egypt. It was built by the British and the French. So there's the Suez Canal. In 1956, Egypt decides to nationalize the canal. That means it takes control, it takes over, and closes off shipping. The other thing that happens is there is a rebel group called the Fedayeen, and they are attacking Jewish citizens in the Gaza Strip. So we have these two issues. There's a number of problems with closing the Suez Canal. It means that Israel's economy will fail. Israel relies on the Suez Canal for shipping. And now that they feel that their citizens are being attacked, Israel is quite nervous. So the French and British say that they will help. They will help Israel if Israel is attacked. But they're not doing this because they're selfless. We've seen over the course of this year, no country does anything purely out of the charity in its heart or its selflessness. There's something to be gained from it. In particular, France and Britain are concerned about the flow of oil through the Suez Canal. Israel decides to invade the Sinai Peninsula and the Gaza Strip because they felt that they have been attacked, that their way of life and their people have been threatened. When Israel does this, the rest of the world goes, okay, whoa, 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 Israel. You're getting your military all involved, and Egypt's military isn't involved in this. That, this was a financial issue and a few rebels. But Israel doesn't see it that way. They see it as a threat upon their way of life. So the United Nations gets involved, and we have these, they're called peacekeepers, and their job, it's military in the United Nations, trying to prevent other fighting. So the UN peacekeepers push back the Israeli military out of Sinai, but Israel has demonstrated, hey, we are a brand new country, but we will defend ourselves. Don't mess with us.